Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of One Pittsfield with Mayor Marchetti. Today we are at the Pittsfield Police Station. Joining us shortly is Chief Tom Dolly, the city's chief of police. But before we start our conversation with the chief, we have a few things to catch up on since our last episode. So last Tuesday I was invited by Governor Healy to attend a press conference in Lowell with an announcement of HDIP funding for the Wright Building here in Pittsfield. Allegrone Construction Company is receiving just under $4.1 million towards the redevelopment of the Wright Building. This project is a $17.8 million project, and it involves two downtown properties. One, the historic Wright Building, and the other, the former Jim's House of Shoes properties. Both of these will retain the historic facade of the Wright Building and the commercial store frontage on North Street. And there'll be 35 units of housing created in the upper levels, 7 of which will be priced at affordable rents. We held our third Mental Health Substance Use Advisory Committee, and we have identified 5 major challenges that we'll be working on, and we're dividing that up into 3 focus subcommittees: mental health and substance use, violence, and life skills / quality of life. Took some time over the last couple of weeks to walk up and down North Street and meet with some of our downtown business owners and discuss how we're doing with our downtown. We attended several community events, first with Strike Out Cancer at Clapp Park, raising funds for the Dana-Farber Institute. Many events related to the city's 4th of July celebrations, the car show and trivia night, the Mummers concert, the Berkshire Health Systems and Berkshire Running Center's 4th of July 5K race, and Pittsfield's 4th of July parade. Later that day, there were 2 baseball games at Wacona Park, including the Babe Ruth All-Star Game and the Berkshire Adult Game, followed by a great fireworks display sponsored by the Pittsfield Suns. We attended First Fridays at 5, even though the weather was a little bit iffy in the beginning. It turned out to be a really great night. And Common Ground Festival at Clapp Park on Sunday, because it was postponed from Saturday due to the threat of rain. If your business or organization is celebrating a special milestone or other exciting news, please send an email to my office at mayorsoffice@cityofpittsfield.org with the details, as we'd like to recognize you as part of this ongoing program. Now let's get to the council agenda for Tuesday night. The City Council is on the summer schedule for meetings and only meet once during July and August. On the agenda for July 9th City Council meeting is the appointment of Kevin Sherman to the Licensing Board, the reappointments of Frank LaRagione and Colleen Hunter-Mullet to the School Building Needs Commission, the reappointment of Bobby Orsi, an appointment of Dr. Andrew Plager to the Board of Health, and the reappointment of the members to the Wacona Park Restoration Committee: Joe Benjamin, Gary Bianchi, Marjo Catalano, Maureen Logan Daniels, Brian House, Darren Lee, Len Light, Cliff Nyland, and Councillor Persip. And I'm looking forward to the report that should land on my desk shortly. The reappointment of Daniel Steinman to the Community Preservation Committee, and we're adding 3 new firefighters to the Pittsfield Fire Department, and they will begin their training process within the department. There's a couple communications from the mayor's office. One is an order to accept a deed in lieu of foreclosure for 27 Francis Ave, and then declaring 2 properties as surplus at 27 Francis Ave and a property on Dewey Ave. We also have several easements for consideration by the council for the much-awaited reconstruction project of the East Street intersection at Woodlawn Avenue. This project has been in the state's queue for quite some time, and we are getting closer to the next phase of this project. Stay tuned in the coming weeks for more details. Now, the part of the show that you've been waiting for. Today I'm joined by Chief Tom Dolly. So Chief, you've officially been the chief for just a little over a month. How's it been? I mean, I know that you took the title as interim chief for the year before that, but how's it been?
Yeah, since June of 23, I was the intern, replaced Chief Mike Wynn, and it's been challenging. We've been busy, as you know. We've had a couple incidents that we've navigated and gotten through and did a fantastic job. I'm also trying to put together my command staff, my full-time permanent command staff. So, with civil service that has some red tape, and we get through it. Put on a couple different teams for this summer. I did the bike patrol. We upped our bike patrol officers for mainly downtown area and the outskirts of that. I have a joint diversion team for the co-responders. I also have a separate downtown unit of officers that patrol downtown in conjunction with the bike patrol. We did well with our budget. We did okay. And we're looking forward to it. We're pushing forward.
So, Chief, one of the things that you mentioned, and I think it's important to kind of highlight as we were in council chambers and doing the official appointment, even though I think that appointment happened a few days beforehand with the stroke of a pen and such, your concern for your staff.
Correct.
And, I think those of us in the public do a lot of complaining about, hey, we never see them or they never respond. But talk to me about the day in the life of a police officer and what takes place during the course of a day.
So we're just like anybody else. We put our pants on the same way as everybody else does in the morning. One of my main concerns taking this job was officer wellness and making sure my officers have what they need to do the job, because if they're not happy or they're not well, then they can't serve the public, they can't serve the community that they live in. So that was one of my main concerns, to reach out and try to find resources for my officers if they need help, their wellness, their physical ability to do the job and stuff like that. So I think that was one of my main concerns coming in here. I've been in this department for over 22 years. It means a lot. The community means a lot. I've been born and raised here, so
that you led right into my next question. So you're a Pittsfield native.
Yes.
I know there was some scuttlebutt that you didn't live in Pittsfield.
Correct.
Kind of goes with the job. You need to live in Pittsfield in order to be the chief of police. Yeah. So talk to me about your career in the department. Where'd you come from, and how long did it take you to become chief? Even though I think the day that you said, I'll be a police officer, you had no dreams of becoming chief.
That's correct. So, as we stated, that I was born and raised in Pittsfield. I went to PHS. I went to college at Western New England for criminal justice. I got on, prior to getting on to Pittsfield Police, I was a part-time officer in Hinsdale, part-time officer in West Stockbridge. I was a correctional officer with the Berks County House of Correction. And I also worked as a trial court officer. And that was, back in the 90s up until 2002 when I was appointed police officer for the city of Pittsfield. Started as a patrolman. Soon after that, I got into the anti-crime unit. Right after that, myself and another officer was appointed to the FBI task force for, I think it was the gang task force back then. After that, I was promoted to a detective. And I think that was in 2011. I was promoted to detective. Then in around 2016, I was promoted to sergeant. And from there, I made lieutenant, day patrol lieutenant, detective captain, and now the chief.
So you talked about the gang task force. And some of that just kind of went through my mind, not being a stranger to city government. Did you follow a similar path to former Chief Wynn? Was he involved in the gang units as well? I
believe early on in his career, he was on, I don't believe he was on the FBI task force, but he was on the task force for gangs.
Okay.
He did do some work with them. I was fortunate enough to be appointed to the FBI as a task force officer.
Okay.
We have different, matter of fact, we just put an officer on the ATF task force. And now I'm looking for an officer to go on to possibly the Marshals, U.S. Marshals Task Force. So it's good to have those resources in Pittsfield and bring them here. And that's what I'm trying to do. Because, we can't do it ourselves. We need everybody involvement.
So early on, when we were attempting to learn who each other were through the process as I was becoming mayor, and obviously we were going through the chief's process even before I became mayor, because former Mayor Tyre helped me kick that process off. You've talked about your desire of having the department be more community engaged and more focused in the community. So can you talk to me about your plans to increase engagement? And while we're at it, we can kind of talk about the National Night Out program that was brought back last year.
Like I said, born and raised here. I have deep family roots here, friends here. I've said to you, I'm changing the name of community policing to a community engagement, because I'd like my officers to be more involved in the community. If there's functions, I would hope to be invited. to certain functions. Have my officers there, not in the capacity of where they're working, but to have them there as a community. To see, we have a lot of new faces on the department. A lot of officers don't know the residents in the community. Just get the face out there and try to get more involved in the community. I think that's important to have that transparency and trust between the police department and the people we serve.
And as I have been out and about doing community engagement myself, I don't think there's very many events that I go to that there isn't a member or two of the PPD there, providing some kind of oversight and to ensure the events are safe. Just this past weekend, being at the Common Ground Festival, there were 2 or 3, maybe 4 officers at the event, engaging not just with me, but with the residents who were there. So it's
great.
Really good to see. So I think it was last year, 100-year leadership, we brought back National Night Out in the Common. Then we hadn't seen that in a couple years. I know last year there was free hamburger, hot dog to the kids. There was
Donuts.
I think there might have been some ice cream.
Yep.
With a popsicle.
The Dunkin' Cup.
And also some kind of painting or decorating.
It was face painting
and stuff.
Yeah.
So any plans to bring that back?
Absolutely.
This year?
I thought that was a huge success. I've been to other national night outs that we've hosted, and by far the last one we had was the biggest and the most successful. It was great to see everybody, and I really enjoyed it, actually.
There were long lines
Yeah.
For quite a bit of the time.
Yeah.
Watching the kids trying to get whatever freebie there was to kind of.
There's a lot of stuff to give away.
And it was great to see the interaction. I think that if we talk about changing the name of policing and you want to make it community engagement, the youth of our city need to feel comfortable walking up to an officer rather than fearful of an officer. So,
Absolutely.
I think that event can kind of go a long way. And so this year's event is August 7th in the Common. So folks, stay tuned for details. I was overwhelmed with the attendance at last year. There probably was 500-600 people plus in the park, maybe even closer to 1,000 people in the park.
Yes.
And it would be great to see you kind of surpass those numbers from
I would love
year.
to. And going back to what we were saying about the community engagement, Mayor, keep the invitations coming to my office. As soon as I get the invitations, I push it out to the department as a whole. Not just my officers, but also my staff, my civilian staff. If I don't know about the event, certainly I can't have officers and our presence there. But please, keep them coming. If we can make it, we'll definitely be there.
So, Chief, I hear from a lot of folks in the community, what happened to the walking bee patrol, what happened to some of those stuff. I think policing has changed enormously over the time just of me being involved in politics. And I think now we're in a time where probably more than 50% of your calls are crisis calls. They're not, someone broke into my vehicle or someone broke into my house. A majority of the calls become a crisis call, whether it be a domestic or whether it be some form of mental health or substance use issue. Talk to us about the change and how that's affected the PD and how you need to kind of work in that direction, right? We've talked about co-responders. Your co-responders and some of the PPD staff have been great assets as we kick off the task force. And knowing that, we're dealing with a homeless person in an area where the general public doesn't really want to see them.
Correct.
Yet there are a few laws to be able to, enforce. I think that it should be said that your department is doing a great job, especially in the downtown, where if people are doing an illegal activity, we're taking action.
That's correct.
If they're just hanging out, that's not an illegal activity. So talk to us about the shift and
Sure. So right now, my shifts are staffed at about 7 officers on the street. Midnights are a little different, but we have 7 officers on the street, 1 officer at the desk. We have 6, 7 beats in Pittsfield. 2 are the micro beats, which is mainly the backups to the outer skirt beats. The city is divided predominantly by the train tracks and I think it's North and South Street that way. So we have, and Coatesville has its own beat out there as well. So we have about 7 officers on the street at all time. During the summer, it's tough because there's vacations, so we're not able to overstaff those shifts. But we do have a team of co-responders, 1 social worker, 2 co-responders that work right with the officers. They work a 4 and 2 schedule. 1 co-responders on days, 1 co-responders on evenings. As you know, we're trying to up those numbers for co-responders. We also have what was the joint diversion team, which works with the co-responders, but they're their own entity as well. So I have about 6 officers that I put on that are going to be CIT trained to respond to mental health follow-ups, Section 12, Section 35s, and that eliminates, I don't want to say the burden on the police officers, but they have their beats to answer calls at, as the diversion team will answer those types of mental health calls. And then, actually, we did bring back the walking beat,
Right.
which is my downtown officers that are, they're primarily the Common, North Street, Seymour Street, this large area of downtown.
And so, part of my plan has been trying to make the downtown look inviting.
Yes.
And so I think folks noticed over the holiday weekend that we achieved North Street being really inviting in terms of activities and events. I know many of our businesses did extremely well the morning of the 4th of July and then on First Friday, but a police presence and, just not putting an officer on the bike, but having that officer touch base with someone who looks like they might be in crisis, shortly. Just checking in, hey, how are things going? Checking in with the business owners and saying, are there problems that we're missing? I think those are the things that we need to continue to do as a community to, allow people to feel safe.
I think I can honestly say that the at least for the first and second shift, day and night shift, the officers are ranging between 70 to 100 calls for service. That's a lot of calls for service for 7 officers on the street. So we're going to call to call. Like you said before, if not half of the calls are mental health related. So we're really focusing on that aspect of things and trying to really beef up the numbers for our co-responders, our diversion team, and have our people trained. They can deal with that type of stuff.
When we first started this show, I talked about people complaining that they call the police and they don't think anything's happening, or sometimes they complain, and as we investigate, we look and see that no call was made for service for that particular thing. So help me try to help the general public understand that, hey, I saw this guy doing something. Great. You saw them doing something. But in order for an officer to take action,
we need more info.
They need to see the same thing.
Yes.
Or if there's a video of something that took place. So just because there's a call that's been made and, an officer showed up, it doesn't necessarily mean that the investigation ends at that point in time.
The dispatchers do a great job of triaging calls. We call it stacking. So if there's an emergency going on, obviously that takes priority. And it kind of goes down from there. And when the officers assigned to that beat for that call, when they're freed up, and if it's a non-emergency, non-exigent circumstances, they will get to them, the caller, whether maybe it could be a phone call. It could be them actually showing up to the house. So we kind of triage the calls as they come in. And, I apologize beforehand that we're not there in right then and there, but we do get the calls, all our calls recorded. If it's dispatched, that's recorded in our system as well. So
I think more importantly is to encourage folks to call when they see something.
absolutely, I'm a big proponent of that.
I think this past weekend, you and I were exchanging emails over the weekend about fireworks. And when we talked about the particular area and the complaint, there were no calls for service at that location or on that particular day. And so I think folks need to call. 4th of July is a really weird.
It's overwhelming. Such a busy day.
I don't think that, fireworks being shot off are an emergency. And with all the other stuff that's happening on the city, that's one of the ones that gets put to the later in the stack of events. But it doesn't mean that we don't care and that we're not paying attention. And so I think it's kind of important for folks to realize that if you don't make the call, they're definitely not going to respond. And we can't make the assumption that you guys know. Although, I do just want to quickly touch on ShotSpotter.
Sure.
As it was a topic of conversation during budget season. And, I'm going to hang my hat on ShotSpotter to the one incident that we had where shots were fired. ShotSpotter picked it up. Everyone was made aware. PPD went to action. And there is proof in the particular call that I'm talking about that happened off of Anoda Street that ShotSpotter worked and the PPD co-responder critical incident response.
They're on the scene with us.
Worked.
Yep.
And we were able to, deal with that situation without anybody getting hurt at that point in time.
Yes.
And so I think it's important that we kind of talk a little bit about ShotSpotter and its benefit to the department.
No, it's definitely, you got to also think of the victims when something like that occurs. If we have an incident where a ShotSpotter is an actual gunshot, we're able to respond to that area very, very quickly if there's no callers. Because typically sometimes there's not callers. It's just the ShotSpotter, the officers go, and God forbid there's a victim there, we can aid that victim right away. Now, if there wasn't any calls for service for that shot, we wouldn't know about it. We wouldn't know that there's a victim wounded or has to be, hurried off to the hospital. So, and when ShotSpotter, we've had it for a few years now. When it was initially, when the data came in about the areas of the city that was getting the shots, the calls for service for shootings, that's what ShotSpotter based on the geographical area of placing the system. So I don't even know where they are. To be honest with you, it's a proprietary system through ShotSpotter. But we get notified several ways. The officers have them on their phones, their work phones. Dispatch gets them. So it's.
And I would imagine if I'm an officer responding to the scene, there's enough information to let me know that I'm going into an area. Where do you think the shot was fired from? So, it's one thing of driving into it.
Correct.
Versus driving up to it.
Yep.
And so I think that information is also helpful.
When ShotSpotter goes off, everybody goes the other way, and we go towards it.
So, Chief, before we end, I just want to commend your department.
Thank you.
In the last month or so, there's been a lot for the department to handle, both from motorcycle accidents where, the first people on the scene is the PD, and it's not a positive situation where there's been a death from the accident that, the officers need to deal with. We had our homicide, but your team within 24 hours had a suspect and had him in custody.
Correct.
We had a shooting on North Street of two individuals within a couple weeks. We have a suspect in custody. So, I think that folks have to recognize that we do live in an age that's much different than 50 years ago. But I think we need to give credit where credit is due. And when the bad stuff happens, your department is there and is solving the problems and
we are.
and not letting them go. And I know that we all get uncomfortable when those kind of circumstances happen. I get uncomfortable. I know that you get uncomfortable. the department does, and I know the community does. But I have great faith in the work that you guys have done, and want to commend you for that. So, folks, thanks for tuning in. 30 minutes goes by quickly, and I know how much the chief really loves to be interviewed. And so I thought it was important to sit down with the chief, get the chief's perspective of what it's been like the last year as the interim and over the last month as the formal chief. Chief, I appreciate all the work that you
very much.
The men and women at PPD do. For now, we'll see you next month, because last month I gave you the wrong dates and times. I told you that we were meeting on the 4th Tuesdays of July and August. I have no idea why I said that, because I've spent 16 years on the city council knowing that schedule. So we'll see you the second Tuesday in August. For now, take care of yourself. See you soon.